So picture this. It's Trinidad, it's Christmas Eve, everybody gathered under the mango tree, Granny handling the corn on one side, Dad organizing the meat on the next side, Mom there filling and folding the pastels, and the children wrapping and bundling them on the other end. This was a common scene experienced by my dad in his multi-generational childhood. Now, as much as I love a good Christmas story, what I really want to do today are to talk about three main things. Firstly, I'd like to showcase that this traditional, more inclusive family structure has evolved over the years. Secondly, I'd like to suggest that the pandemic has actually highlighted reasons for inclusive living. And thirdly, I'd like to offer some design options for this type of inclusive lifestyle. So here in the Caribbean, our culture traditionally denotes a multi-generational household, one where you could often find everyone from granny to grandchild living under the same roof. We still see this, yes, in some families, especially those of East Indian descent. However, within recent times, we have witnessed a gradual yet evident shift from this traditional structure to one that favors less persons in the household and more independent living. So this shift from the extended family to the nuclear family, yes, it's given us more freedom and autonomy to pursue our goals, etc. However, on the other end, it has ended up weakening the family structure. In his encyclical Laudato Si, Pope Francis stresses that it is in our human pursuit of our goals that we have created this sort of throwaway culture, one where unwanted items and also unwanted persons are discarded when they are no longer deemed necessary. Here, Pope Francis also makes mention of the elderly being included among those that are unwanted, as they're often considered a burden in society. What's interesting is that the inclusion of the grandparent in the family was actually really evident in late medieval Christian art. So in the 14th century, the Holy Family was actually depicted using Saint Anne, which is Mary's mother, Mary the Virgin, and Jesus. Now, the more widespread notion of the Holy Family, featuring Mary, Jesus, and Joseph, though current in the 14th century, really gained its popularity in the 16th century, and this was in a response to the Reformation led by Martin Luther. Now, further to this, the Second Industrial Revolution that hit in the late 19th, 20th century, and it's also around this time that the Feast of the Holy Family was established. So the church, by constantly depicting the idea of Holy Family as Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, has also aided and abetted this Western, more modern idea of the nuclear family, and subsequently it's excluded the grandparent from the picture. I want to suggest as well that the nuclear family has also had an impact on the square footage of the household. Now remember that as the number of persons in the household shrank, the average footprint of the household would have also decreased over time. So I know that if we were now to suggest to reintroduce the grandparents into the household, it could really seem daunting to many, as it would take a substantial change in our mindset and in our culture. But this brings me to my second point, that the pandemic has actually highlighted reasons why the inclusion of the elderly in our households would actually be a reasonable consideration. We've actually noticed how vulnerable they have been to the virus. In a policy brief issued by the United Nations, it was estimated that 66% of persons aged 70 and over have had at least one underlying condition, placing them at an increased risk of severe impact from the virus. Now, this heightened risk has resulted in many of them preferring to stay at home with their families rather than being lodged in a long-term care facility. So perhaps the pandemic and its radical impact on the elderly can be what turns the tide in our mindset towards more inclusive living. On this note, I would like us to look at a design concept called aging in place, which, as the name suggests, allows persons to age comfortably in place. And by place, I mean at home with their families, and this is regardless of their income level or their ability. Again, I know that for many of us, this would be a difficult change in our mindsets and our spaces, but I do believe that with the incorporation of some simple universal design principles and a bit of creativity, that we can create livable environments that support safety, connection, and beauty, resulting in an easier, more comfortable transition for the elderly to age gracefully. So let's take a look at some of these design options. So smart home devices can easily improve the efficiency and quality of your home and your life. They easily limit the amount of effort you exert for a task and improve the independence for seniors who prefer to age in place, but it also benefits the household at large. Another thing we could look at is contrasting colors. So macular degeneration is a disease that causes damage to a person's central vision. It starts to creep up on you as you increase in age, and this causes light and depth perception to become more challenging. So by juxtaposing contrasting colors, it makes it easier for persons to differentiate between items, and this makes it safer space for persons to move around in the household. Rounded handles prove to be difficult for older persons or those with disabilities such as arthritis to grasp or to turn. Now, lever handles require much less effort and are so much more recommended. You can simply apply gentle pressure to open or close the door. You can even do it with your elbow, and this comes in very handy when you're doing simple activities like having groceries in your hand. Now, if we go into the bathroom, we can use wall-mounted dispensers. Now, these prove to be very useful for persons with impaired dexterity who may not be able to properly grasp a bar of soap. They can instead use liquid soap or body wash dispensed on a loofah perhaps, which may be easier for them to apply to themselves. Now, having a wall-mounted dispenser also aids those with mobility issues, as it prevents them from having to bend over to pick up a bar of soap if it fell to the floor. These dispensers, though, should be placed no higher than 48 inches above finished floor level. And on another note, it's just to be careful that because of the moisture, bacteria is able to collect easily, so make sure to just keep them clean at all times. Now we move to the exterior of the house and enter the garden. And gardening tends to be a common pastime for many people in the Caribbean because of our lovely environment. And it's often disheartening that mobility issues often limit this activity for many seniors. Now, garden beds can be raised to at least 2 feet from off the ground to limit the strain of having to bend over to access them. There are some amazing design solutions done by Raymond LaRocque. Also noteworthy is Green Circle Garden Limited and Nature Sacred, who have created fantastic, innovative, accessible gardens as well. The aforementioned design tips are not strictly limited to the elderly, but in fact they aid everyone and so can be universally applied. This makes it more accessible to the multi-generational household. Now, the pandemic, coupled with our ever-increasing aging population here in the Caribbean, is sure to increase the demand for amended homes and upgraded facilities for older persons. And so good universally designed spaces would be necessary to create safe, inviting, and comfortable environments that the entire family unit can enjoy. Thank you.